Hey guys, tonight we're heading out to the dusty, dangerous, and deeply uncomfortable Wild West. Picture this. A dry wind whistles through a shuttered town. Somewhere, a dog barks, a revolver cracks before sunrise. And you're flat on your back in a creaky wooden shack, waking up to the scent of moldy straw, your own unwashed socks, and, if you're lucky, whatever breakfast didn't scurry off during the night. This is the Wild West. It's loud, smelly, and it absolutely does not care that you skipped your morning coffee. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere out on the frontier of modern civilization, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where this sleepy little campfire circle reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up to a sound that's somewhere between a gunshot and a donkey scream. Probably both. It's 5 a.m., and the sun hasn't even bothered to show up yet. But the saloon across the street has been closing for 4 hours now, and your neighbor's rooster seems personally offended that you're not already up and working. You sit up and immediately regret it. Your bed is stuffed with straw that's gone sour with time, sweat, and something else you try not to identify. The pillow is a folded-up saddlebag, and your blanket is mostly just a poncho that's seen one too many cattle drives. If you slept well, it's only because your body finally gave up trying to fight the flea bites. Getting out of bed is an adventure in itself. The floorboards creak under your weight, and there's always the risk a nail will go rogue and stab you in the foot. That's assuming you're not sharing the shack with someone or something else. Mice? Common. Snakes? Occasionally. A drunken stranger who forgot which bunkhouse was his? More than once. You head outside, and the morning hits you like a spitball of dust and sweat. There's no indoor plumbing, obviously, so your first stop is the outhouse. It's perched at an uncomfortable distance, mostly because the smell would kill a coyote at 10 paces. You make the journey holding your breath and trying not to trip on the uneven path. Once inside, it's a cramped wooden box filled with memories of everyone else's digestive adventures. Spiders the size of teacups live in the corners. And the seat? Cold. Always cold. Even in July. Back inside, you splash water on your face from a cracked basin. The water is tepid and murky, and you pretend not to notice the floaties. There's no toothpaste, no toothbrush, just baking soda if you're lucky, and a ragged scrap of cloth you're supposed to rub on your teeth, like it makes a difference. As for clothes, you're lucky if your one set isn't still damp from yesterday's thunderstorm. Laundry isn't a daily luxury here. It's a monthly prayer. You slip into your trousers, which are stiff from dust and sweat, and button up a shirt that was white back when Lincoln was alive. Your boots are cracked, your hat's too big, and you smell like someone who wrestled a goat for sport. Because maybe you did. That's just Tuesday out here. You step outside again, and the town is slowly waking up. Smoke curls from a blacksmith's forge. A couple of women sweep their wooden porches with stern expressions that suggest sweeping is a form of judgment. Children run barefoot through the dirt, yelling about snakes again, probably not joking. Historians still argue whether most frontier towns were truly as lawless as legend says. Some records show a surprising amount of order, even city ordinances and community rules. Others? Well, they suggest that if you coughed the wrong way in Deadwood, someone might mistake it for a threat. The sheriff might be real, or he might just be a drunk with a badge. Either way, you don't want to be noticed. You keep your head down, which ironically makes you more noticeable. Strangers aren't welcomed with open arms. They're measured, weighed, and mentally filed under watch him. There's a quick clatter behind you. A kid chasing a pig barrels past, and you nearly trip. Someone laughs, probably at your modern reflexes. The pig escapes down the main road like it's got a dinner reservation in the next county. And here's the thing they don't tell you in Western movies. Everything hurts. Your joints ache, your skin's sunburned, your hands are already blistered from the work you haven't even started yet. You're not even sure what your job is today, only that it'll involve sweat, splinters, and maybe, just maybe, an angry mule. Oh, and did I mention the breakfast situation? Because spoiler alert, there isn't one. Not yet. You wander toward what passes for a kitchen, really just a shack with a wood stove, a few dented pans, and the faint smell of regret baked into the walls. You're starving. You'd settle for stale bread. You'd even chew on old jerky. But unless you caught something, trapped something, or remembered to barter for food yesterday, you're out of luck. The pantry holds exactly two things: a tin of dried beans and a weevil colony that seems to have unionized. The beans go into a pot over the stove, and you start heating them with the weakest flame imaginable. Wood's expensive. Kindling is damp. Fuel options include cow dung, yes, dried and crumbled, and sometimes just praying really hard that heat happens. Coffee? That's funny, real funny. There's a tin of it on the shelf, but it's been reused so many times it's more of a bean-scented suggestion. You scoop some into a kettle and watch it boil down to a gritty, black sludge that tastes like punishment. People in the Wild West drank it anyway, often through clenched teeth. Some sweetened it with molasses if they were fancy. You drink it because the water alone might kill you faster. Historians still argue whether frontier folks truly lived on such meager fare, or if we've exaggerated the hardship a little for dramatic flair. Some accounts describe hearty meals and stocked pantries. Others mention chewing boiled leather during winter. Truth probably falls somewhere in the middle. Enough to survive, not enough to smile about. You head outside, mug in hand, and lean against the door frame. The horizon is already shimmering with heat. You remember reading once that the West was beautiful. And it is, if you squint past the suffering. Golden plains, jagged cliffs, endless skies. It all feels grand until you realize how easily it could kill you. Your stomach growls again, and you consider breakfast the old-fashioned way, hunting it. Problem is, you don't know how to track anything except lost Wi-Fi. The people around you, they were raised on this. They know how to read hoof prints, identify droppings, and predict rabbit behavior from the way grass bends. You step on a cactus and yelp. Still, you try. You set off with a rusty rifle someone lent you, barrel bent, sights off, but it fires, sometimes. You wander into the brush, sweating through your shirt before the hour's out. Every sound feels threatening. A bird flaps overhead and you nearly dive for cover. Something rustles in a bush and you freeze. Could be a rattlesnake, could be a prairie dog, could be your own nerves. You do what any self-respecting city dweller would do. Retreat slowly and pretend you meant to turn around. By the time you return, empty-handed, someone's cooking bacon. Real bacon. You follow the scent like a cartoon hobo, only to discover it's the neighbor's hog roasting on a spit. They nod politely, but do not offer you any. Food is a currency, and you haven't earned a dime. You sulk away and eat half-cooked beans with a fork made of sadness. Here's a quirky detail. In some frontier towns, folks ate fried squirrel, pickled tongue, and something called son-of-a-gun stew, which included organs from whatever was freshly butchered. Some swore it cured everything from heartbreak to saddle rash. You, on the other hand, chew another mouthful of bland, gritty beans and reconsider your life choices. As you scrape the last of your meal from the pan, your stomach still grumbles. There's no protein, no fiber, and definitely no vitamin C. That's how scurvy sneaks up on people. Yes, scurvy. In the West. Not just a pirate thing. You think about oranges and nearly cry. Meanwhile, work waits, and it never stops. You're expected to pull your weight whether you're fed or not. Chores range from herding cattle and digging ditches to hauling water in buckets heavier than your hopes. You try to offer help, but your help slows things down. You hold a shovel wrong. You pour water on your own boots. You're that guy now. Someone finally hands you a chore you can't mess up, carrying wood. You manage to drop it 3 times. A nearby rancher chuckles. "City boy," he says. Not cruelly, just accurately. You nod, wheeze, and try again. By midday, the sun is in full murder mode. The temperature climbs well past what your SPF 50 lifestyle can handle. Shade is rare. You sweat like a waterfall. And still, no one slows down. Frontier folk didn't get heat breaks. They just got sunstroke. You remember hearing tales of cowboys and outlaws dining on hearty meals under the stars. What they don't say is how often that meal was hardtack. A biscuit so dry and dense it could chip your teeth. Some folks softened it in coffee. Others just sucked on it for an hour and hoped for the best. You finally sit in the shade of a broken fence, your stomach churning, your clothes soaked, and your dignity somewhere near the outhouse. You made it through breakfast. Barely. But the day is still young, and already the West is winning. The saloon doors swing open before you even reach them, and a man gets bodily hurled into the dusty street, landing with a grunt and a puff of dirt. He groans, picks himself up, and staggers away, shirt torn, nose bleeding, but somehow still clutching a mostly full bottle. The barkeep doesn't even look up. Business as usual. You hesitate at the threshold, staring at those batwing doors like they're a portal to another dimension. And in a way, they are. Inside is the social heart of the town. If by social you mean tense, unpredictable, and occasionally fatal. The room is dark, smoky, and full of eyes that don't welcome yours. You step in and instantly feel like you've walked onto a stage with no script. A piano plays lazily in the corner, keys slightly out of tune. A few cowhands sit at a table playing poker. One of them notices you, and his expression says, "New meat." You make your way to the bar, trying to walk with confidence you don't actually have. The floorboards creak under your boots, and the spittoons glint ominously along the wall. You order something safe, sarsaparilla maybe, but the barkeep barely glances at you before slamming down a glass of amber liquid that smells like varnish and decisions you can't take back. It's whiskey. Everything is whiskey. Even the coffee probably has whiskey in it. The saloon isn't just a place to drink. It's a court of public opinion, a bank, a courtroom, and occasionally a boxing ring. You watch as two men argue over a poker hand. Voices rise. One of them stands, knocks over a chair, and reaches for his hip. Everyone else freezes. Here's the wild part. Historians still argue whether these saloon shootouts were actually common or if Hollywood made them up. Some towns like Dodge City and Tombstone kept detailed records that suggest things weren't quite that violent. But the fact that there are records at all means people were definitely dying, just maybe not every Tuesday at 4 p.m. In this case, the fight fizzles out. The barkeep gives the angry gambler a look that could melt butter, and the man mutters something about next time before sitting down again. But the tension never fades. Everyone's always a little on edge in here, because one wrong word or even one wrong look can escalate into something you really don't want to be part of. You try to fit in, but it's not easy. Your clothes are wrong. Your accent is wrong. Your hands don't have the calluses of someone who's roped cattle or dug graves. You stand out like a lantern in a blackout. You hear snippets of conversation around you, some about cattle drives, some about gold strikes, others in hushed tones about a robbery last night. There's a wanted poster nailed to the wall. It shows a man with a wild beard, sunken eyes, and a reward so laughably low it's basically a dare. You glance at the gambling table and make a mistake. Eye contact. One of the players smirks. "You play?" he asks. You shake your head, but it's too late. He waves you over, and now you're sitting with strangers who look like they've cheated death and the dealer more than once. They deal you in anyway. You have no idea what you're doing. You win the first hand, accidentally. You smile. That was your second mistake. They stop smiling. One man mutters something under his breath and folds. Another raises. You panic and do the same, tossing in a coin that might be half your money. The final card lands, and you realize your hand is complete nonsense. You fold too, sweating through your shirt, and excuse yourself with a mumbled lie about nature calling. Back at the bar, you try to relax. A woman in a feathered hat walks past. She eyes you with mild interest, then glances down at your boots and moves on. You've officially failed the cowboy aesthetic test. You want to leave, but there's etiquette involved. Stand up too fast, and you might offend someone who thinks you're running. Don't say goodbye, and someone might assume you're up to something. You linger just long enough, then shuffle out into the daylight with a sigh of relief. And then, there's the snake. Because of course there is. It's sunning itself on the wooden steps like it owns the place. You yelp, flail backwards, and land flat in the dust. The snake slithers away, probably embarrassed for you. A man sitting on a bench nearby spits and drawls. "Ain't from around here, huh?" "Nope. Not even close. Here's a fringe detail for you. Some frontier towns kept rattlesnakes as unofficial mascots, like living warnings to outsiders. One saloon in Texas supposedly had a live one in a glass box behind the bar. For luck, they said. You're starting to suspect the West had a very different definition of luck. You dust yourself off, dignity in tatters, and stagger toward the edge of town. You were hoping for community. Instead, you found a room full of mistrust, bad whiskey, and creatures that want to kill you, and not all of them slither. By now, the heat has risen another 10 degrees. The saloon is behind you, but the feeling of being watched isn't. Not everyone in town likes newcomers. Some tolerate you, others don't. And some are simply waiting for you to mess up. One wrong step, one misunderstood glance, and you're not a visitor. You're a problem. You wipe the sweat from your brow. Again, it keeps pouring, like your body is staging a slow-motion protest against the entire Wild West experience. The sun isn't just bright. It's malicious. It cooks the top of your head through your hat, turns your shirt into a damp rag, and makes the dirt road shimmer like it's boiling. Shade is a lie. You sit beneath the one crooked tree you can find, and it feels like standing inside a pizza oven with a small umbrella. Even the insects seem annoyed. A horsefly circles your head like it's sizing you for lunch. You swat and miss. Twice. It's hot, it's dry, and you're thirsty. Which brings us to today's big mistake, drinking the water. You wander to a nearby trough where a few others have filled canteens. It looks safe enough until you see the dead beetle floating in it. You scoop it out and pretend that makes it drinkable. It doesn't. The water tastes like rust, hay, and something distinctly hoof-flavored. In many frontier towns, wells were shallow and shared, meaning contamination was almost guaranteed. Cholera, dysentery, and typhoid weren't just rumors. They were regular guests. Historians still argue whether the water systems were truly as primitive as some records show, or if people just ignored obvious health risks in favor of convenience. Either way, you're now sipping from what might be a microbial smoothie. You can feel your body trying to negotiate. Just a little hydration, it pleads, but your stomach already knows. It gurgles ominously, and you glance toward the outhouse again. It's a long walk when urgency strikes. There's no plumbing, of course. No faucets, no hand soap. Hygiene is more of a hope than a habit. People bathe when it rains, or maybe once a week if they're fancy. You start to wonder if your clothes will actually fuse to your skin by sundown. And now your skin itches. Dust clings to every inch of you. It scratches when you move, coats your tongue when you breathe, and forms a gritty line between your teeth. Your eyes sting, your lips are cracking, and you're starting to understand why cowboys always looked so angry in photographs. They were dehydrated, chafing, and half blind from dust storms. Speaking of which, the wind is picking up, not in a soothing beach breeze kind of way. This is desert wind, carrying particles sharp enough to exfoliate your soul. You turn your back to it, squinting hard, and pull your hat down tight. There's a trick you don't know: soaking your bandana and tying it around your face to avoid breathing in dust. Of course, soaking it requires clean water, and we've already covered that nightmare. So you improvise, pull your shirt collar over your mouth, and try to look like you meant to. It doesn't help much. The dust gets in anyway, coating your throat and lungs like powdered gravel. You cough. Someone glances at you. coughing in a crowd like this? Risky. You could be labeled as sick, which might get you quarantined, or just avoided until you vanish on your own. Harsh, but practical. A local woman passes by, balancing a water bucket on her hip like it's an extension of her spine. Her face is smeared with lard to keep the sun off. Yes, lard. Sunscreen doesn't exist yet. Some folks use mud, others use soot. One particularly odd method, used in certain Native American tribes, involved fish oil. Either way, the goal was the same. Don't turn into beef jerky by mid-afternoon. You try to think cool thoughts. Ice cream, showers, air conditioning. But all you get is the memory of the last time your fan broke in July and how that felt like a tropical vacation compared to this. You glance up. The sky is a bright, unforgiving sheet of blue. No clouds. No breeze. Just that constant pressure of heat pressing down on your head like a judgment. You try to remember if it ever rained in the Wild West. The answer is yes, but unpredictably, but too much at once or none at all. Flash floods one week, cracked earth the next, and yet, despite all this, the locals are just fine. They move slower, sure, but they're used to it. Generations of adaptation. Kids still play, men still work, women still fetch water like it's no big deal. You, on the other hand, are melting like an undercooked biscuit in a furnace. You start to hallucinate something cold. A bottle of soda, maybe, with condensation on the outside, ice cubes clinking. You blink, and it's gone. Replaced by a mule chewing grass and staring at you like it's concerned. Here's a fun fringe tidbit. Some travelers in the West swore by swamp tea, a concoction of wild herbs, sometimes boiled with sage or pine needles. It was meant to hydrate and soothe the stomach. More often, it just made people nauseous and added an earthy kick to their misery. By now you're desperate. You take another sip of water from your canteen and try not to think about the beetle you scooped out. You convince yourself the heat is character building, that this is what makes legends. But in truth, it's just breaking you down, one salty droplet at a time. And the day's only halfway over. You're dizzy. The sun has turned your brain into a boiled egg and your stomach is staging a protest against the beetle broth you drank earlier. But you can't rest, because now someone mentions the sick boy at the Miller place, and suddenly you're part of the frontier's favorite drama, survival by guesswork. The Wild West was a petri dish with horses. Illnesses swept through towns like tumbleweeds on a mission. No one quite understood how diseases worked. Some folks blamed bad air, others pointed fingers at curses, or worse, outsiders like you. And the real kicker? Doctors weren't always better than doing nothing. You follow the neighbor toward the Miller homestead. There's a kid there, maybe 6 years old, pale as paper and burning up. His mother dabs his forehead with a damp rag and mutters prayers under her breath. There's no medicine cabinet, no antibiotics, just hope, boiled water, and whatever someone remembered from a traveling preacher's sermon about herbal poultices. A man arrives with a leather bag. You assume he's a doctor. He smells like sweat, tobacco, and something vaguely medicinal. He opens the bag and you brace yourself for gauze or a thermometer. Instead, he pulls out a bottle of whiskey, a bone saw, and something that looks like a bent spoon. Your blood runs cold. Fun fact, Doctors back then didn't always attend medical school. Some trained under other barbers. Yes, barbers. That's why many doubled as surgeons, tooth pullers, and impromptu dentists. Historians still argue whether frontier doctors did more harm than good. Given their love for bloodletting and mercury, it's a valid debate. The doctor feels the boy's forehead, sniffs his breath, and nods gravely. Could be cholera, could be typhoid, maybe worms. Not exactly confidence-inspiring. He mixes a dose of something brown and gritty from a bottle labeled tincture of something you can't pronounce and pours it down the poor boy's throat. Everyone stands back. You try not to look horrified. Out in the West, diseases didn't ask for permission. Cholera killed in hours. Tuberculosis lingered for years. Scarlet fever, smallpox, measles, they all took turns. And if you got a minor injury, infection could do the job just as efficiently. Remember that rusty nail you nearly stepped on this morning? Congratulations. You've just met tetanus. Hope you enjoy full body spasms and locking jaws. There's no cure yet, just gritted teeth and crossed fingers. You ask someone if they ever wash their hands before treating patients. They blink at you like you asked if cows can knit. Germ theory is new, and many frontier folks still treat it like a superstition. Cleanliness is seen as more of a preference than a health measure, but the weirdest part? They do believe in some health rituals. People hang garlic above doors to ward off illness. Some wear special charms, even rabbits' feet dipped in vinegar. There's a whole market for snake oil, literally and figuratively. Salesmen roll into town with wagons full of miracle cures made from herbs, alcohol, and heavy metals. People buy it anyway, desperate for hope in a bottle. One fringe remedy from the time involved laying a dead chicken on a person's chest to draw out illness. Another popular cure for fevers, soaking your socks in whiskey, setting them on fire, then sleeping with them nearby. Do not try this. As the doctor leaves, you notice his bag is still open. Inside, a small handsaw and a rag soaked in something flammable. For amputations, he says, as if you asked what he does for fun, you suddenly become very protective of your limbs. Back in town, people talk in whispers. The Miller boy might live, might not. Everyone's seen this before. No one panics. They just prepare. Food deliveries, prayer circles, maybe digging a grave out behind the shed, just in case. You try to help, offering to fetch more water. The well is shallow, and the rope creaks ominously as you lower the bucket. It comes back up with cloudy water and something that wriggles. You dump it and try again. By late afternoon, the heat has faded slightly, but the air feels thick with dread. Illness does that. It shrinks the world, makes every cough sound like a death rattle. You cover your mouth with a handkerchief and keep your distance, but you already drank the water. It might be too late. You ask around about vaccinations, and someone mentions a traveling doctor who came through last year with a needle and a cart full of elixirs. He left town the next day. The people he injected? Half got better. The other half grew rashes and vanished into the hills. Whether he was a genius or a fraud is still debated, along with whether those hills were haunted. Eventually, you're left sitting outside the general store, watching as flies gather around the saloon's horse trough. You try not to breathe through your nose. A woman nearby fans herself with a bonnet and mutters about the heat making people weak. You wonder how many just silently suffered and disappeared before anyone noticed. You thought food and heat were the worst of it. But now, as you feel your stomach churn again and your skin start to chill despite the fading sun, you realize this place doesn't even need a bullet to kill you. Just time, just exposure, just a single sip of the wrong water. You pull your hat low over your face and try to rest. But somewhere in your mind, you hear that doctor's words again. Could be cholera, could be worms. Sleep tight. By the time your body stops trembling and you convince yourself you aren't dying of cholera yet, the town starts to change again. It's not sunset yet, but people are moving differently. Men glance toward the horizon, mothers call in their children, lanterns are lit, and hands start drifting toward gun belts. You're beginning to understand that in the Wild West, day and night aren't part of the same world. Day is brutal, but night is lawless, and everyone is armed. You sit on a barrel near the livery stable and try to stay invisible. You've seen more pistols in this one town than in a whole season of westerns, and most of them are tucked into dusty belts, shoved into coat pockets, or dangling loosely from saddle holsters. The thing is, none of these people are trained marksmen. There's no shooting range, no certification, just shaky fingers, itchy tempers, and rusty six-shooters with names like Widowmaker and Old Sally. And they're all loaded. Historians still argue how common actual gunfights were. Sure, everyone had a weapon, but how often they used them is another story. Tombstone had some famous shootouts, Deadwood too, but in many places, it was more about intimidation than actual bullets. Still, one angry glance, one drunken accusation, and someone could wind up with a hole in their chest. You're walking past the blacksmith when it happens. A yell, a crash, a scuffle from inside the saloon. The door bursts open and two men tumble out, fists flying. A crowd gathers, quickly. No one intervenes. This is frontier entertainment. You try to back away quietly, but then one of the men pulls a gun. Everything goes very still. The other man freezes, one hand on his swollen eye, the other raised slowly. You can feel your heart thumping like a drum against your ribs. Then the gunman curses, throws the weapon to the ground, and storms off into the dust. You breathe again. Sort of. One of the bystanders notices your pale face and says, "Don't worry. He ain't shot anyone since spring." Comforting. You head for the general store, hoping to disappear for a bit. But even there, guns are part of the furniture. There's a rack of rifles next to the canned peaches, a box of bullets beside the flour. You realize there's no separation between everyday life and deadly force out here. It's just normal, and everyone expects you to know what you're doing. You carry your borrowed revolver like it's a cursed object. Someone offers to teach you how to shoot and takes you behind the stable. He sets up bottles on a fence post, hands you the pistol, tells you to aim. You miss the first shot, and the second. The third hits a rock. The recoil nearly takes your wrist off. You're squinting, sweating, trying not to drop the thing. The man laughs kindly but steps back. Maybe don't carry that around just yet. You thank him, quietly, then tuck the revolver away and hope no one asks you to prove yourself again. A quirky little historical tidbit. Some frontier folks were known to file down the front sight of their pistols, not for accuracy, but because it made for a cleaner draw from the holster. The problem? It also meant worse aim, but looking cool during a duel was, apparently, worth more than actually winning it. You wander back toward the main street and notice something odd. There are no police, no sirens, no one to call if something goes wrong. The sheriff's office is technically there, sure. A little wooden building with a rusty star nailed to the wall. But whether the sheriff is in or awake is a gamble. Law enforcement in the Wild West was a patchwork of volunteers, vigilantes, and men who often bent the rules they were supposed to uphold. Pinkerton detectives, hired guns, and even bounty hunters made up the rest. Justice wasn't blind. It was just busy doing something else. And then there's you. You, standing in the middle of it all, praying no one mistakes your awkward stance for a threatening posture. You've heard stories about people getting shot over spilled drinks, bad poker hands, or even bumping into the wrong horse. You try not to blink too loudly. You take a seat by the jail, hoping the presence of iron bars will somehow protect you. They won't. You peer inside. Empty cell. Dusty cot. One old hat on a hook. Possibly the sheriff's. You remember hearing that some cowtowns actually banned guns inside city limits. Dodge City and Abilene had signs warning travelers to check their firearms at the edge of town. But enforcing those rules was another matter. People ignored them, or worse, claimed the rules didn't apply to them. That outlaw poster you saw earlier? Turns out the man's cousin lives 2 doors down, and he's not thrilled to see it tacked to the wall. He tears it down, spits, and mutters something about family honor. You decide not to ask questions. A breeze picks up as the sun dips lower, but it's no relief. The heat is fading, sure, but the tension is rising. You see more rifles now, more side glances, people walking in pairs. There's something about twilight in the West. It makes the shadows longer, the silence sharper. You start to imagine you're being followed, even when you're not. Or maybe you are. You can't tell anymore. That's the genius of the place. It keeps you guessing. Someone laughs too loudly in the saloon. Another gun flashes briefly under a coat. A dog howls from somewhere beyond the ridge. And you, clutching your mostly useless pistol, start wondering if sleeping tonight is even an option. You try to act casual, walking slow, not fast enough to look scared, but fast enough to avoid standing still. The town has a pulse now, a nervous, twitchy heartbeat that picks up with every creak of a porch step and every flicker of lamplight. And no matter where you go, one thing never leaves you. The feeling that you're being watched. It's not paranoia, not here. In the Wild West, everyone watches everyone else. It's survival. You hear footsteps behind you, quick, then gone. A door opens, then clicks shut. A curtain sways in a second-floor window just as you glance up. You're a stranger. You don't know the customs. You don't know who's related to who or what feud you might have stumbled into just by smiling at the wrong widow. And out here, information moves faster than the telegraph. The second you arrived, someone started asking questions about you. And by now, the whole town has made up answers. Historians still argue how tight-knit frontier towns actually were. Some were genuinely communal. Barn raisings, mutual aid, neighbors helping neighbors. Others were icy cliques run by gossip, bloodlines, or brute strength. It depended on who built the town and who ruled it when the sheriff wasn't looking. You duck into the general store, hoping for a moment of peace. It's dim and dusty, lined with shelves full of soap that's mostly decorative and canned goods priced like treasure. The storekeeper nods at you but doesn't smile. He's already decided who you are. Not from here. Possibly trouble. Probably gone by morning. You buy a biscuit that tastes like sorrow and pretend to browse. Two men enter a few minutes later. One tips his hat at the clerk. The other doesn't even look at you. But you feel it. Their eyes scan you up and down. The second man fingers the edge of his belt where a knife handle gleams. You nod politely, overcompensating, and step aside. They leave. You exhale. You go outside and find the streets emptier than before. The kind of empty that buzzes. You know what's out there. People watching from windows, men on porches with rifles resting casually in their laps, children told to stay inside. You remember something a rancher told you earlier. Town's got memory. Best not make yourself too memorable. But what does that mean when simply existing here is enough to make you suspicious? Your feet lead you toward the edge of town, where a few ramshackle cabins sit half-lit under the last glow of sunset. You pass a fence and see someone whittling a piece of wood into something vaguely weapon-shaped. They don't speak. They just keep carving, eyes half-lidded but alert. You pick up your pace again, and that's when you hear it. The unmistakable click of a hammer pulling back. You freeze. You don't even turn around. Your brain goes blank. You've seen the movies, someone behind you, a finger on a trigger, no warning shot. But instead, there's a voice, low, drawling. Thought I recognized that hat. You turn, slowly. It's the man from the card table, the one you accidentally beat earlier. He's grinning, but it's not friendly. Nice game earlier, he says. Real nice. Except I don't like losing to folks I don't know. You stammer something about beginner's luck. He steps closer. Another voice cuts in. A woman's sharp as a slap. Back off, Sam. Ain't worth it. It's the bartender, the one who didn't serve you. She stands in the doorway of her establishment, hands on her hips, expression daring him to continue. Sam scowls but backs off. He ain't gonna last the week anyway, he mutters, then walks off into the dark. The woman nods once at you, then disappears into the saloon. You walk again, this time careful to stay where the lanterns still flicker. You've never wanted walls around you more in your life. But even inside, people are watching. There's a man at the boarding house with a ledger, writes down every person who comes in. Another woman near the stables asks where you're sleeping, just curious. Nobody's ever just curious out here. Quirky detail. Some western towns had unspoken codes for travelers. Tying a horse on the left post meant you were staying overnight. Leaving it on the right meant you were just passing through. Not knowing that could get your saddle stolen, or worse. You find a bunkhouse eventually. It's crowded and noisy, but no one seems openly hostile. You take the cot by the wall and try not to think about lice, or ghosts, or who might follow you in later. Someone snores like a grizzly bear. Someone else whispers prayers in Spanish. The air is thick with sweat, smoke, and a touch of something medicinal. Maybe pine tar, maybe snake oil. You curl up on your side, blanket pulled to your chin, pistol under your pillow, because that's what everyone else is doing. You stare at the cracked wooden ceiling and listen. The sounds never stop. Creaking boards, boots on gravel, a horse snorting, a door closing, gently, too gently. Every sound could mean something, or nothing. The Wild West doesn't sleep. It just waits. And you, eyes wide open in the dark, can't shake the feeling. Someone, somewhere, still has their eye on you. The clock strikes midnight, figuratively, because there's no actual clock. Just the slow tolling of time and groans of timber, distant coyotes, and the sharp snap of cold seeping in through every crack in the bunkhouse walls. You haven't slept. Not really. Every time your eyes flutter closed, your body jerks awake. Sure, it heard something. And then you do. A thud. Soft. Maybe outside. Maybe not. You hold still, not breathing, ears straining like a coiled spring. Around you, the others sleep. Deeply, or at least convincingly. One man mumbles in his dreams. Another snores louder than you thought possible for a human throat. But you're not focused on them. You're listening for the next sound. It comes. A boot scraping just outside the door. Your hand finds the pistol under your pillow. You don't even know if it's loaded right. You're pretty sure the safety's a myth and the trigger feels too loose. But it's there, and it's all you've got. Another step, a creak of wood, and then silence. You slip out of the cot, barefoot on cold planks, inching to the door. Your heart is tap dancing in your ribs. You nudge the curtain aside and peer out through a crack. Nothing, just shadows, long and still and waiting. You don't sleep after that. You sit on your cot, knees drawn up, the pistol across your lap like some kind of plastic security blanket. The hours drag. Outside, coyotes howl again. Closer this time. Then an owl hoots. Then something else, low, guttural. Could be a wolf. Could be your imagination finally snapping in half. The Wild West at night is a very different beast. The law disappears with the sun. The animals come closer. The walls thin out. Everything gets quieter, and that's when your brain starts imagining sounds that aren't there, or worse, noticing the ones that are. There are rumors here. Every town has them. A man with glowing eyes who roams the hills at dusk. A widow who poisons drifters. A rider who shows up once a month and leaves behind nothing but hoof prints and bullet casings. Historians still argue how much of this was real and how much was frontier. Folklore spun up by isolation, whiskey, and sleep deprivation. Either way, you don't want to find out. You don't. Eventually, dawn threatens the sky in pale blue streaks. The shadows shrink. The chill fades. The gun is still in your hand. You haven't fired it, but you haven't let it go either. You step outside and freeze. Right there, in the mud by the door, is a single boot print. Not yours, not old, pressed deep like someone stood there and watched, maybe for a long time. You spin, half expecting someone behind you, but there's nothing, just wind and empty sky. Your stomach is a knot, not from hunger, though that's still happening, but from the realization that even if you made it through the night, you were never safe, not even for a second. You sit on a barrel and watch the sun finally rise. The town stretches. The butcher opens his stall. A few kids chase a chicken past the jailhouse. It all looks normal. so painfully normal that it makes last night feel like a fever dream. But then you hear a rumor. Someone found a man dead near the edge of town, shot once. No one heard anything. No one saw anything. Just a body in the dirt and empty boots still standing upright. No one talks about it directly, but you see how people look at you today. Not scared, just calculating. Like they're wondering if you know something, or if you did something. You don't belong here. You never did. And now you have to decide, leave or blend in. Neither option feels safe. One gets you followed. The other gets you swallowed. And here's a lovely little fringe fact to go with your panic. Some towns in the Wild West had secret vigilante committees. Citizens who took justice into their own hands when they thought someone was a threat. No trial, no defense, just a rope and a tree. So, you pack your things, what little you have. You leave quietly. No goodbyes, just dust and fading footprints. Because the West doesn't care about you. It never did. It chews up the weak, tests the strong, and only remembers the ones who shot faster or died slower. And as you walk away, half starved, half awake, barely alive, you understand one final, inescapable truth. You wouldn't have lasted a single day here. The wind begins to soften now, just a low hush through tall grass and empty trails. The sun has risen over the edge of the prairie, casting long shadows that stretch and fade like breath on cold glass. You walk slower now. You've made it to the end, or at least this end. The town is far behind you. The gun is gone. The heat is a memory. And in its place, there's only the rhythmic sound of your boots pressing into earth and the distant calls of birds beginning their morning routines. There's no danger here anymore. Just space. Just quiet. Just time unfolding like a long, slow sigh. Let yourself breathe deeper now. Let the image of the bunkhouse melt away. The flickering lanterns, the dry air, the unease pressing on your ribs. It's all dissolving with every step forward. That ghost town? That hollow-eyed gunslinger? The water that made you sick? Gone. All behind you now. You're somewhere gentler, where nothing hunts you, where no one watches. Just open skies, a cooling breeze, and the steady promise of sleep pulling at the edges of your mind. Let it, because you're safe now. You've seen what the Wild West had to offer, and you're done surviving. Now, it's time to rest. Sleep well, partner. SS.